In October 2019, one of my favourite guitar players, Simon Jarrett from Kingsley Pedals, was in the UK. So I called Simon and said, would you mind giving me a guitar lesson that I can film, so everyone can check it out, which he, graciously said yes to. Now, after the filming of that episode, I was handed the media from the lesson and swiftly lost it. I had no idea what happened to it, searched everywhere for it. Well, I'm very happy to report that that media has finally been discovered, hidden in a pocket in a bag that I had no idea even existed. So, here is that masterclass from Simon Jarrett. I just wanted to take you through a couple of terms first that, if you understand, will make this lesson a lot easier. So the first term is diatonic, or diatonic harmony. And it's just another way of saying in the same key. So if I'm in the key of A major, and I play notes within the A major scale, then I'm playing diatonic harmony. I'm in the key of A. But if I play outside, those notes are not diatonic to A major. Okay, you'll hear terms like 145 or 245 or 36251. These numbers relate to the chords in that key. Okay, so again, if I'm in the key of A, a 145 would be 1 is A, 4 would be D, and a 5 would be E. A pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale, okay, that includes chord tones. So an A minor pentatonic would be 1, minor 3, 4, 5, minor 7, and back to the 1. The major pentatonic is again a 5-note scale. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1. A tritone is a flat 5 interval that wants to resolve. Okay, so here's our flat 5 interval. And we might find this in an E dominant 7 chord. There's our tritone, and that will resolve to. Now don't worry if you find any of these terms confusing. You'll still get a lot out of this lesson. It just might mean you need to do a little bit more homework later on. Okay, here's Simon. Hey guys, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Simon here.
Man, that was just achingly beautiful.
Random noodlings.
Oh mate, far out. So, Simon's in the country for a brief period of time, and I wanted to nab him. Last time you were in the country, I didn't get a chance to do this.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for taking the time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Two things I want to talk to you about specifically. First of all, you have this touch sensitivity thing going on when you're playing. From the very first note I ever heard you play, it was really apparent. But the other thing I want to talk to you about is your sense of harmony, and it's mind-blowing. But if we can start with the touch thing first, and your approach to gain structure, and just there's I don't know, every time you pick a string, there seems to be just dynamics and control, and it's unreal.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. But I mean, in all honesty, that's something that's been a bit of a struggle. It still is a struggle for me. Is just sort of having that sort of confidence to sort of grab the guitar and play with force and conviction is always something that I've had to kind of like work towards. And I found that, you know, I've had a lighter touch. I don't know quite why that is. And so it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because if you have a lighter touch, you can discover that if you have a little bit of gain on a pedal or on your amp and you lighten up your touch, you kind of can sit in this kind of middle area in between the sort of too light and the sort of compressed, maxed out gain all the time, which gets tiresome. So I'm just always trying to find that kind of middle ground where it can be, you know, a little bit of subtleness and then you can still make a note pop out and grab you a little bit, even though there's some compression and sustain happening. So I'm just always, I mean, honestly, I'm not quite sure really what to say there other than that it's a work in progress always. And I'm always just, I just favor those, you know, I've listened to a lot of players who have like a light touch,
Right.
but who can also, you know, step out and dig in when needed, and that's just interesting for me.
Let's just have a listen to you play with a little bit of gain. So, for example, if we're just doing something like over an A minor pentatonic, just a bluesy thing.
Yeah.
You know, so normally, like for me personally, it might be, and everything's full on. Everything's, you know. How would you approach a line like that, you know, or any sort of pentatonic simple thing?
Well, okay.
Like to start with, is your guitar always full up?
My starting position is full on because then I know sort of where the max level is.
Okay, yep.
And then I'll either stick with it full on and use a pedal to get more if I want.
Okay.
But a lot of the time what I find is I might have one or two different gain stages on,
right,
and then just ride the volumes a little bit so that I can kind of, it just depends on the setup and on the sound that day.
Okay.
Like I'm not a kind of, you know, written in stone kind of approach kind of thing. It's just, it's something that just depends a little bit. But I tend to, like most people, sort of, you know, dial in the volumes at first and go, okay, what's going on here? So that's not very gainy, but if you dig in a bit, there's a lot more there. So it's just my starting point in my picking attack is perhaps a little lighter. So it's just a lighter.
Far out, man. It is devastatingly beautiful.
Well, thank you for saying that, but I haven't really. It's, as I say, it's honestly, it's not something that, you know, I find that I'm particularly confident with. I find I'm, you know, always kind of struggling a bit to just kind of find a comfortable zone and feel like I can play. Whereas guys who have a heavier
if you getting comfortable means that it's going to change that, don't always be uncomfortable. Honestly,
right, always be uncomfortable.
How does so? But the really interesting thing about that is your level, your volume level isn't changing. It's not drastically. There's as you dig in, you hear that gain, but then it sort of cleans up, and in a phrase it'll go like this, but the level isn't changing. Like it's not like I've got a pristine clear amplifier and I can go really hard, it's like loud, and then to nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So and I'm assuming, because obviously the way that you approach gain with your pedals is a massive part of that.
Well, I guess, you know, when I've designed pedals and amps, I've primarily, like a lot of small guys who start out doing this for themselves, you know, you voice things to the way you play and the sounds you like. And for better or worse, that's kind of how things start out. And then sometimes I get feedback from other people and customers who use stuff, and sometimes they like it, and other times, you know, it requires some tweaking for their tastes. But yeah, my starting point has always been, it's got to be like, there's got to be a sort of touch sensitivity where I feel like it's not always too compressed or too gainy. So it's all about on the edge for me, you know, between clean and just breaking up. That's my zone. And then you can build upon that, you know. If you have a light touch, it'll be clean enough. And if you want more, you can either roll up your volume or step on another gain stage, right? So, I mean, honestly, that's the same with a lot of guys. I think we're all trying to do that, right? I mean, the thing about the guitar is when you hit a note, the note's always going to die, isn't it? It hasn't got anywhere to go, really, unless you can crank it up and get feedback. But whereas the human voice or a horn, you know, they can, their envelope can, they can do whatever they want, right? So we're always fighting against that and trying to make it interesting. So you've got to kind of mess with the dynamics. And it's something that it's not something that I've specifically said I must work on this and I must do these exercises or something. It's just something that kind of grows organically as you play for many years.
When I listen to what you do, I'm like, okay, I've got to get some of that in there. But it seems to me like it's almost a quite a fundamental approach shift, you know. So being able to, even if I'm just doing a pentatonic thing, instead of making all the notes even. You know, being able to, I don't know, accent some notes and that sort of stuff.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I've been influenced quite a lot by jazz guys. And so there's that kind of swing thing. And when you're practicing doing a pentatonic line, you know, you can give it a sort of... So...
immediately sounds great.
Well, the first thing you can do is, a very easy approach is, accent the upstrokes a little bit.
Okay.
So that's kind of exaggerated, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of got that swingy feel, right? And so how much you accent them, you know, is sort of where the character comes out.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And then, of course, there's no reason why you can't apply that to even eighths or sixteenths as well, right? Somebody who does that, who plays a lot of notes, but has this kind of nice way of kind of like, it's always kind of bopping up and down and weaving in and out, is Mike Stern.
Oh, man.
You know, he's got crazy chops and he plays all these bebop lines. But if you listen to it, even there's a lot of like 16th notes going by and stuff, there's kind of like contour in the accenting within the lines, which makes it interesting. So yeah, I've practiced that a little bit with swing, you know, because I mean, if you don't know anything about swing, you might be tempted to go, which is the opposite of what you want, right? Right, just simple.
Thank you. All of a sudden, listening to that, I feel relaxed. I want to be in a velvet plush armchair with sort of smoking jacket on.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
big fat Cuban.
Well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad
going,
thing, but
yeah, man.
But it's something that you can mess around with and you can delve into. You know, it has a certain kind of feel and relaxed vibe about it. Maybe, you know, it's yeah, it's just.
It does. It puts you instantly at ease. You instantly feel that sense of just. It's not even a thing about being behind the beat or anything like that. It's just
another thing.
It's that feel. It's that. As opposed to being pushy and you know, just
but the behind the beat thing is another thing that you can work on to make the playing a little bit more interesting. So you've got the dynamics of the individual notes within the swing feel, and then you've got either pushing the beat or playing behind the beat.
Sure.
And if you want to exaggerate that swingy, loose, relaxed thing, you kind of play a little bit behind the beat. You know, you kind of stretch it a little bit, right? So it's not especially push, but a little, or behind the beat. But yeah, I kind of like that kind of feel and sound. It depends on the piece and how you're feeling, and you know, when tempos pick up, it's harder.
It sounds like a horn line. You know what I mean?
Well,
it has that because there's that dynamic element of it being, you know, louder and softer isn't right, but there's more compression, there's less compression, you know, because
right.
But it does feel like someone's blowing into a horn with that sort of style. It's amazing.
That's very nice of you to say, and it's something, you know, that everybody works on, just trying to get a good touch and a good tone. And it's just, but definitely playing soft I find is interesting, because that way if I play somewhere, not up here and not down there, but somewhere in between, I've just got somewhere to go,
So how are you setting up your gain stages for that sort of sound?
So right now I've just got the minstrel on, and I've got a pretty mild overdrive amount. So you can play like that, and I kind of like that zone. Or if we go a little bit more, typically I might have more that kind of gain, and that way there's a little bit more push, and then you can just kind of play with it here a bit, that's kind of... So quite often I'll set it up about that much gain, but it's relatively clean, and I'll just adjust this as I go a little bit, and as you get going, you'll bring it up a bit. But that's what guys have done forever, right? I mean, and I think that's a big part of getting interesting gain tones is not always just setting things and winding your volume up. So I'll wind my volume up if I've got like a light gain.
Sure.
Because then I've got enough variation in my pick attack.
Yep.
But if I've got a little bit more gain like that much, then I'll tend to use my volume controls more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there, because your pedals are, famously handmade valve pedals, and I've just mentioned this one. I've been playing with the Squire, which is the EF86 thing, and I've always loved those. So you have a huge amount of tonal variation within the way that you set up these valve gain stages. Is there something specific about the way that the valve works that enables you to get the sounds out that you're hearing and the way that you play?
I think it's more a matter of I started with the valve thing with valve amps.
Right.
So, that's kind of where it all came from, is tweaking Fender amps and Marshall amps and Vox amps and learning how they work a little bit, and how the gain stages work, and what you can do to make the overdrive touch sensitive, and then that translates it basically right across to pedals.
Right.
It's just that because I'm using valves in pedals and at relatively high voltages, it's a lot of the same stuff that happens in the amps. If I was designing solid state pedals, I mean, it would really be the same stuff, but your voltages are much lower, and so you've got to adjust things accordingly, and so there's other things you've got to take care of. But I mean, I find that with valves, it's a relatively easy transition for me coming from amps to making valve pedals. Other than the fact that you have to tweak the sound of the output of the overdrive, because you're going to feed it into a guitar amp. Right?
Sure.
So it's a little bit different.
You'll need to forgive me, because I've sort of met you with the whole pedal thing, and every time we do a show with you, and loads of people always comment, oh, you've got to try one of his amps, they're amazing. But I've sort of been so enamored with the pedals that you make, I keep forgetting, actually, you have a whole catalogue of amplifiers and things that you make as well.
Yeah, I've made quite a lot of different amps over the years, although I have to admit, these days it's pretty much mostly all pedals.
Right.
Amps are still there, and occasionally I'll make one, and hopefully I'll sort of delve back into that as I get more help. With the business, making pedals and stuff. I'll probably get the amps back going and be able to deliver some more of those. But right now, they're kind of taking a bit of a back seat.
Because you're busy, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? The pedals have been great, and, and I've partly got you to thanks for that. Because you've been very kind to me, and it's very much appreciated. But, so the pedals have been awesome. And the nice thing about pedals is, if you're going to do it as a business, you don't have the worries about shipping them all over the world, big heavy amps and things like that, especially if you're only making very few, setting that up and shipping and packing and all that stuff. Pedals are so much easier, and worst case scenario, if one doesn't make it to the destination, you can send another one. It's not the end of the world, right?
Sure.
So from a business standpoint, if you've got people who like them, pedals are pretty nice in that way. But I do have an itch to get back into the amps, because that's where I started, and I just love that thing of, designing a nice tube amplifier.
Right.
So yeah, that's coming more in the future for sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so the Squier 86, basically, that has an EF86 in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
what is it about that valve? There's something about, because I love, in the Matchless, I'm going into the clean side today only because because we're playing really quietly.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to warm things up a bit. At this really low volume,
mm-hmm.
the EF86 side of the Matchless is still quite bright. But
Right.
as soon as you turn it up, it,
Yeah.
blooms and blossoms. But so, normally I just plug straight into the EF86 side of that.
Mm-hmm.
And anything I plug into it pedal-wise, I don't know what it is, but it sounds like it integrates into the amp better through an EF86 side.
Yeah.
It sounds less of an effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is about the...
It might be, there's various things going on, I'm sure, but it might be because the EF86 is a single gain stage valve.
Right.
So whereas a 12AX7 or a 12AU or a 12AT7, they have two gain stages within the envelope. Mm-hmm. An EF86 only has one gain stage, but it's a higher gain stage, right? So you've got less gain stages between your guitar and the speaker, right? So you've just got one gain stage, which is run pretty hot, and then that pushes the phase inverted tube, which is, I think, a 12X7 in there, and then the output tubes.
Right.
So there's barely anything in the audio signal path, right? So it's kind of like a pure direct path to the speaker. So that's probably playing some role.
Sure.
And then the fact that there's no treble and bass tone stack, because that makes a big difference, and that really kind of sculpts the sound quite a lot. Typically, they tend to scoop the mids quite a lot.
Sure. Okay.
So if you were to make a similar, in fact, Vox, of course, the normal channel in a Vox, while it doesn't, the newer ones don't have EF86s, they use a single half of a 12X7 for the normal channel.
Okay.
And it doesn't have the gain of the EF86, and it won't sound quite the same. But it's a similar thing in that it's more of a neutral, mid-fat, flatter tone.
Sure. Okay.
And I think that's a very nice neutral platform for pedals.
Yes, and it just has that cut.
Yeah, single cut.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's a nice foundation that is more neutral sounding than the other channel, which might sound pretty for chords and have more treble and bass, and, but there's something about a slightly leaner but fat, thick sound that you get out of an EF86 into a power section, right? Yeah.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, on to the meat.
Yeah, sure.
We've talked, we've done basic diatonic harmony and building chords in thirds and stacking our tries to extend. Okay, so, just building up to seventh chords and people understanding what ninth chords are.
Right.
But it's all been done over diatonic harmony. So, for example, if we were doing just a 1-4-5, but starting on A minor to D minor, but then to the dominant 7 on the 5, right? And you're looking at that in just using your standard arpeggios, and then so all that lives within the diatonic thing very nicely.
Yes.
But when I hear you play, there is so much. You have these. It's so interesting, the harmony and the way that you approach these chords. So we're then getting into melodic minor harmony and like those extended things. Yeah. So, for example, how would you start? Like, if someone's okay, I understand what's going on diatonically with diatonic harmony. I want to start getting to these more extended, interesting voicings.
Sure.
How do you start?
Okay. Well, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. I think, first of all, doing the diatonic stuff is excellent, and learning the arpeggios is excellent too, because that gives you a roadmap.
Yes.
So you've got the core chord tones, right?
Yep.
Under your fingers, and you can kind of visualize them and see them.
Yes.
Right? So that's huge. one thing that has to be said, of course, the trouble with all this stuff is scales and arpeggios, is it rapidly becomes like, you know, a theoretical kind of, you know, swamp of like information.
Absolutely.
You can get lost in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's understandable that some people find this hard to sort of, you know, integrate into their playing. So what can you do? Obviously learn your basic arpeggios. I think that's a good idea, even if you don't play arpeggios.
Yes.
Just as an exercise to learn where the chord tones, because they're the money tones for the particular harmony, right?
Sure,
You need to learn whether it's like a roadmap, right?
Sure.
So learn that, and then instead of diving into complicated scales and stuff, maybe just use a combination of the arpeggio and the pentatonic scale. And then as you're going, maybe say, well, what else can I do to sort of liven this sound up a little bit, and pick one note which is perhaps a little bit outside of the norm or of the pentatonic that we're used to. So if you're doing that A minor 7,
Yep.
A minor pentatonic, a note that I could add to that would be the natural 6,
Okay.
right?
And that's replacing the 7.
Yeah, I replaced the 7 with a natural 6.
Yep.
For an effect, you know, for sound. So now it's become like a minor 6 sound.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Now, it's got a certain sound to it, and it's interesting, and you can take it or leave it, or you can use it occasionally. It's kind of nice. If you include it with the flat 7 as well, effectively we're just about at the Dorian scale.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
We'd have to add the natural 2 as well. But,
Sure.
But basically, if you have your pentatonic, maybe we should mention first the pentatonic is, of course, the minor pentatonic at least, is the root, the flat 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and the flat 7.
Sure.
Right? So if we add the natural 6, try messing around with that a little bit and see how that goes. And then maybe go back to the flat 7 instead, try messing around with the natural 2, right? And then when you're ready, maybe combine both the natural 2 and the natural 6, at which point you're actually playing Dorian.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
and these
yeah.
are sounds that a lot of players are using already, whether they know it or not, right?
Well, if I'll just vamp it on A minor, if you can start just doing the straight pentatonic,
Yeah.
then add the 6,
Yeah.
and then do the Dorian thing. Is that cool?
You got it. Yeah.
So,
So when you do Dorian, I mean, a famous player who uses a lot of Dorian would be, say, Carlos Santana, right?
right.
But he might not necessarily focus on that 6 particular. He might like play through it.
Just as a passing
Yeah,
note.
or use it if it's a chord tone,
Sure.
right? But on the A minor, of course, it's not a chord tone,
Yes.
right? But by making it a chord tone, by playing that note, that's the sound the listener hears. It's the minor 6, right? So you can decide if that's too much, if you want to focus on those, or you want to use those as passing notes. So now, when you change to the next chord, of course, this is where it's interesting, because if we're playing in the key of A minor and we go to the 4 chord, well, that's D minor.
Yep.
And that F sharp, which is the natural 6 of A, is actually the natural third of D.
Yeah.
So that won't work against the D minor.
Sure.
So that's where you've got to be careful.
Right.
So when a chord change occurs, first of all, you ask yourself, okay, well, what are the notes in that arpeggio? And how can I then switch to that arpeggio? And then you can practice that, incorporate the natural 6 on the A minor, and then when the D minor comes around, ignore that note and instead focus on the correct notes for the D minor chord. Right?
Because this is where we're getting into playing the changes.
Playing the changes.
Right? Because this is, like you were saying, if we're doing the A minor and we have the natural 6, but as soon as we go here, and what you're talking about in D, the F is the minor third, because we get to the 4 is the D minor chord.
Yeah.
But that natural 6 in the Dorian scale, A minor.
Yeah.
So, with the major chords. So what you're saying is, if I'm playing A, to the D.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what tells us, okay, when we've now, so even then, without playing the chord, because I hit that note, so you knew something had changed.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
And so this is the basic idea of understanding those chord tones so that we can actually target them as we're going through the changes.
Targeting chord tones, exactly.
Right.
So, D minor 7 arpeggio. Right? Now, some notes within that arpeggio are already common to the A minor pentatonic scale.
Yes.
Most of them.
Right. Yeah, right.
But the F note
Yep.
is not in the A minor pentatonic.
Right.
And so we can focus on that. We can
Okay.
make that a target tone,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Now, if you make it too obvious a target tone, it's like you hear, oh, the guy's playing the chord tone on purpose. It's too obvious,
Sure.
right?
Okay.
So you've got to be a little bit subtle about it, maybe. The one nice approach is whatever your last note was on the previous chord, so for an A minor 7, whatever your last note is before the chord change, that should resolve by the closest possible distance into an appropriate chord tone of the next chord. So let's say if I go, that's my last note, right?
Yep,
so
yep.
then, right? So then I've resolved by a small motion into a chord tone. So then it's really appropriate, right?
So what you're saying is, if I'm playing the A minor and I'm, really getting into it, time for the change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
here comes a D minor and that's the note.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then you're thinking too hard and it's not really musical anymore, right?
Right.
So it's got to be natural, right? So you've got to work on those things. And maybe one approach that I did when I was in college is they had us work on these arpeggios and practice connecting them. So for example, if I take one bar on each chord, just between those two chords,
Yep.
the first approach would be this. From the root to the root, there's a jump.
Yeah.
The next approach is to do the connection by the closest possible distance.
Okay.
It's just so obvious, right? It's just
Immediately,
right?
it's musical.
Yeah. So we're still just playing eighth notes. So
Yeah,
it's not
yeah, but
rhythmically
it's great.
interesting. But what about is then you can say, well, okay, within the arpeggio, maybe I won't go straight up and down. Maybe I'll go. There I'm adding a few extra grace notes around it, right? But I started off by just trying to connect the two arpeggios, right?
Yeah.
So find a target note, like that F, and say, how can I get into that F in some kind of musical way? Maybe if G's my last note, I might go. Or maybe from below and above. So finding some way to dip into that note,
Right.
and above and below, and then finally target that note. Right?
Okay.
So that's one thing, is learn your arpeggios, learn how to target the notes which stand out as the notes which do not belong in, say, the regular pentatonic scale.
Sure.
You don't have to do it every time you play over the chord changes, but once in a while, dive into that stuff,
Sure.
right? Where it becomes interesting is we were talking before about the natural 6 on the A minor, playing that Dorian sound. Now, that Dorian sound is going to clash when we go to the 4 minor chord,
Yep.
right? So there you have to be super careful,
Yep.
right? And basically, every time you incorporate some kind of new color note, be it like the natural 6 or maybe even the natural 7 for more tension, then there's the possibility of causing clashes between the different chords. So tension and resolution, it's all about that. Maybe what you can do is, I would advise, first of all, just jamming on a 1-chord vamp.
Yeah.
Just milk that A minor. Get
Yeah.
to know it just pentatonic. Get to know it with maybe the natural 6 added.
Yeah.
Get to know it as a Dorian. Maybe even play the melodic minor and get to know that sound.
So the melodic minor it's your minor scale, but it is your major scale with the minor third.
That's one way to think about
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Probably it's more derived from a minor scale with a raise 6 and a raise 7.
Okay.
But it actually works out to be a major scale with a flat third,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
a funny way to think about it, but it is
Sure.
true. Yeah. So that's got a really neat sound. And we've all heard that sound, especially in like movies and James Bond themes and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, that kind of... That's the melodic minor sound, right? It's rich. It's dark and rich. So, that was an E1, but if we're in the key of... yeah, in fact, that's a good voicing to learn. If anybody wants to just dive into some melodic minor chords.
That's the first inversion though, right? You're starting on the third.
We're starting on the third, that's correct, yes.
Okay.
So this would have been E minor major 9 chord. Okay, it's got a
so
flat
nice.
third, a fifth, a natural 7, and a 9. It's all stacked in thirds, right? It's just thirds.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's a great chord, you know, to end a song on.
Meanwhile, in the back cave.
Yes, exactly, yeah. But that chord is so rich, right? And what it does is it incorporates some of these money notes. You know, it's got the natural 6. Oh, sorry, that's the natural 2. Excuse me. Yeah, it's got the natural 2 or the 9, and it's got the 7, right? It doesn't have the 6 in it, but we could incorporate the 6. So that's an E minor 9 with a 6 in it, so E minor 13. Or we could even incorporate the 6 and the natural 7 and the 13. So
Can you just play the scale for me?
yeah, let me play it. So E minor, E melodic minor would be.
In classical harmony, it's different going up than it is going down, right?
Yeah, they go up one way and down another way.
Yeah, I think they
but
go
I mean,
up with them raised, and then down with the back to the normal Aeolian.
natural minor, Aeolian, yeah. And you can play that too. I mean, it's a nice sound. So you'd get.
That's quite cool,
Right,
actually.
it's kind of nice too, right?
Yeah.
for sure.
So-
but though that 6 and that 7, that's where kind of there's a bit of freedom to mess around, especially if you're playing a 1-chord vamp. Because after a while, you know, you're playing blues licks, you're playing maybe the natural 2 occasion. It's like, oh well, let's bring in another sound. So bring in that natural 6, maybe the natural 7 for a bit of tension. You know?
Sure. But we're going to Flavour Town.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the thing, right? I mean, if you take most theories based upon the major scale, that's where we start, right?
Yep.
So you learn your C major scale and the intervals, and you learn the chords in the key of C, etc., etc. And then at a certain point, you go, oh well, actually, the C major scale is the same as the A minor scale. You play the A minor scale, right? And and typically in classical harmony, we have major keys and minor keys.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
But at a certain point, what happened is they sort of started mixing these things a little bit. So if you took a 1-4-5 in a major key, it would be major, major, and major, or major, major, and dominant 7, for example. If I took a 1-4-5 in a minor key, it would be, if I'm in A minor, for example, A minor, D minor, and E minor, right? That's diatonic to the key of A minor.
Yes.
But more than likely, especially in classical music, that 5 chord, that E will actually be a major or a dominant 7.
Yes. And the reason being is that tritone.
It creates a tritone,
Yes.
and the tritone is tense and it's not stable and it wants to pull, right?
So for example, we've got the A minor, D minor, and diatonically we'll do this. So even though we have that 5-1, if we change from the minor chord to where we get this, that interval there, and then that resolves back to the A. So the 5 over the minor thing is so interesting because we've gone outside the diatonic thing. We're now in, new territory.
Yeah.
So how are you approaching that 5 chord?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things you can do. But if it's just this chord and you're in the key of A minor, the simplest thing is to play the A harmonic minor scale.
Right, okay.
So that's 1, 2, flat 3.
Yes.
4, 5, flat 6, natural 7.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So okay. I hadn't even considered the harmonic minor. The harmonic minor.
Yeah, sure.
Yet.
Why not?
Boy,
yeah.
oh boy. Okay.
Yeah, the harmonic minor is a great choice for a 5 chord in a minor key, right?
Wow.
It fits perfectly. Right?
Sure, of course.
Now, it depends on what extensions are in that 5 chord.
Okay.
This is just a root, third, fifth, and flat 7.
Yes.
So it works fine. But if we do say, now we've introduced the sharp 9, right?
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
that note is going to clash with.
Yes.
So we need some kind of new way of playing over that.
Interestingly, with that chord, and this is something that always starts me with that chord. So this chord it starts with our dominant 7. So we have the 1, the 3, and the flat 7. So we have our tritone, which naturally wants to resolve to or however.
Yeah.
But then, so throwing in that sharp 9, and we get, and within that chord, you have the major third, but you also have the minor third. But
it's kind of bluesy.
It does. It's the fact that they're an octave, almost an octave apart.
Yeah, it's a major 7th.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we get that, we have the tritone here, but then we have this interval here.
Yeah.
And there's so much to resolve in that chord. You know what I mean?
Well, this note sort of clashes with that that tendency to resolve.
Right.
Right? So you've got this tendency to resolve, but this says, oh, I'm kind of relaxed. It's kind of like, it's not like super urgent, right?
Sure, okay.
So it's kind of this weird mixture, The first thing you could do here is if you want to say, well, what can I do now? Well, I could play pentatonic bluesy stuff, and I could keep this note, right? Because that's in the minor pentatonic. Mm-hmm. But I can also add this note, or this note here, right? The octave over the natural third. So we have this possibility of you're going. So
what are we doing there?
Yeah, well, actually, I said I was going to do something, and then I went and played the harmonic minor at first. So but then I remembered, and I hit the natural the sharp 9 there. Just find something simple like that and focus on
that. Yeah.
Build little phrases like that, do do down down ba da down, and then you've resolved,
right,
and start to like hum those kind of things in your head, as you're driving along. Try to think of like little things like that. Imagine where it is on the fretboard and come up with what can I do there. Like make it like a lyrical line, like somebody would sing or something. You're just targeting a note, maybe, or maybe. Maybe just or just something simple, right?
So there you're playing the minor third and the major third because they're both in there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of so that's something you can do without even worrying about what the name of that scale is. Okay?
Sure.
Now, if you want to start to give the scale a name, you can do that. But the more important thing than the scales and the names is the intervals. Like all of this is just sounds, right? So don't get bogged down in the scale names. Learn them if that's your thing. And I like to know the scale names because I'm just inquisitive about that stuff. But some people don't really care, and it's more about how can I have something to say on the guitar. So just learn some of those notes and where they are, and learn the phrases, learn the sounds, and go that route. But if you want to, you could say, well, okay, what scale contains both of those notes? Well, I've got a lot of notes from the A minor scale, and I've got that note. Oh, it's actually, funnily enough, it turns out that those notes all exist within the F melodic minor scale.
Okay.
Now, the F melodic minor, F has nothing to do with A minor per se, but it just happens that if I wanted to describe a scale which contained those notes, as well as a couple of others, F melodic minor is a fit. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, it's kind of tense because it does introduce another new note, which is a little bit a potential for, you know, clashing. So you know the scale? You want to play that scale?
The F melodic minor?
Yeah.
Yep. I know. Sorry.
That's it. That's it. So what we do is, that's exactly right.
Right.
But instead of starting on F, we start on E.
Okay. Yep.
So now we've created a nice little run of notes which incorporate all the notes we want and also introduce one more kind of interesting tense note. And now resolve to A somehow. Okay, that's cool. You could resolve down by a semitone. I think it sounds cooler to resolve up a semitone. Try that. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, so we've done all the modes in our diatonic modes. We've gone through those. Now we're talking about really modes of the
melodic minor scale. Yeah. This is the 7th mode of the melodic minor scale.
Right.
Sometimes people call it the altered scale. And the reason they call it that is because if you look at all those intervals, starting not from F but from E, E is our root, F is our flat 2, G is our flat 3, right? G sharp is our flat 4, right? It's everything's altered. It's literally got no natural notes in the scale.
Wow.
I mean, you could say it's got a natural third, but in fact that's a flat 4. It's the 4th note, right?
Right.
Okay. So that's a nice note if you want to get kind of jazzy and dark sounding on that 4 chord, then you're playing like a bluesy thing in A minor. And the trick is, of course, how to do that and then come back into A minor and not have those notes standing, you know, causing clashes against the A minor harmony.
Sure.
So it takes a bit of work getting used to that. But there are some great sounds in there. So you can either do that and play a scalar run, or you can just think of the individual intervals and pick and choose from those notes and create things like... Right? So, or... So that's the E altered scale, also the 7th mode of the melodic minor. The melodic minor is really interesting, and a lot of jazz guys use, or at least if you go to college and you study jazz, you learn all the melodic minor modes, and they have some interesting applications. We could also use melodic minor modes on other chords within the key of A minor. You know, like if I was playing, sometimes instead of a 4-5-1 or a 1-4-5, a common progression would be. Let's make that chord a dominant 7th or a 9th. Okay, I'm trying to pull out a few more tense notes there.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
You can just, if that's too much, you know, it's kind of like going all jazz land, you know, so you're doing all these altered sounds, right? But you learn that stuff if you learn jazz in college and they show you these different modes of the melodic minor. The 4th mode of the melodic minor is the perfect scale for this F9 chord. Right. Basically, most of the time when you have, this is what we call like a non-diatonic 7th chord, because it doesn't exist. Like normally you play the correct chord F major or F major 7 or F major 9,
Yep.
that exists within the key of A minor.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
F7 has that. So we've altered a note there. So that note's non-diatonic, right? And when you have these non-diatonic 7th or 9th chords, this is the go-to scale.
Okay.
It's the 4th mode of the melodic minor,
Right.
otherwise known as the Lydian Flat7 scale.
Okay.
It sounds like this. Yeah. So it's got a root, a second, a third, a sharp 4,
Sharp 4, yeah.
a 5, a 6, and
flat
a flat 7.
7.
Another way to think of it is mixed Lydian flat 5 or sharp 4. Mixed Lydian sharp 4. It's the same as a mixed Lydian
So
sharp 4.
I'll play that one,
Yeah.
which is and then I'll go down to the
Yeah.
7th mode of the melodic
Yes.
minor, which is the what do we call that one?
The altered scale.
The altered scale.
Yeah, over E.
All right. So and then I'll just
Yeah.
play the A minor. Okay. So.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. Right on.
Right. Okay.
So, you know, whenever you have songs where they have these odd non-diatonic 7th chords, they happen a lot in jazz standards, but also in other music, you know, in blues.
Yeah.
That's a cool scale to play. You know, an application for that scale would be in a straight up 12-bar blues, when before the 4 chord you go. So
Wow.
over that,
Okay.
over
Yeah.
that chord there, you would play the Lydian Flat7 scale.
Okay. So.
Right on there, right? So, yeah. Okay. So, the 4th melodic minor works on E flat 9,
Yep.
and not to throw too much of a wrench into the works, but that's a flat 5 away from A.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that's what we call the flat 5 substitute of A.
Tritone substitute.
Tritone substitute. Yes.
But the cool thing about this is you can infer that chord without me actually playing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
can we hear that? If I'm just I just heard what you played. That was so amazing. I didn't even hit the 4 chord. I probably went down it.
Oh yeah.
So like, oh
Yeah.
man, it's amazing. Whoa.
You know, there's a couple of ways you can think about this. If you don't want to go, oh well, I'm on the 1 chord and all of a sudden I want to pretend like it's this chord, and so I'm going to play this Lydian Flat7 scale. It's a lot to think about. Another approach is just to say, well, I'm just playing A7 for 3 bars, and then instead of playing it on the 4th bar, I'm going to play this chord in my mind. So when I'm improvising, I'm not thinking of A anymore. I'm thinking of E flat 9.
Yes.
You know, you can do that. That's one approach, is sort of think of it chordally.
But the
and
way it resolves to the 4 is just
well, that
so
you've got
beautiful.
and that's what you've got to work on is those resolutions,
yeah.
right? So. Right. So just simple little things like that. Come up with a few little phrases like that, and the more you work at it, the more you can come up with, and eventually you learn how to improvise them. I mean, that's the trick: is how do you get this stuff to actually come out in your playing, and that's a long-term project. You know. Before we just get off that subject, though, what I wanted to say about that flat 5 sub. Notice how it's got the same tritone in it.
Yes, yeah.
So E flat 7 is a flat 5 sub for A7, and that's why this chord here is a substitute for this chord here. So I can play E flat Lydian flat 7, or I can just think from A, which is A altered. So the A altered scale is the same as the E flat Lydian flat 7 scale.
Right, because the all modes of the melodic minor.
They're just most of the same scale, right? Yeah. Different labels, right? Different ways of thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can either think of it related to a particular chord, A altered or E flat, Lydian Flat7, or you can just think in terms of, well, the intervals.
Sure.
And that's a good way to do it too.
Yeah. And knowing those intervals, we've gone over the intervals before, but I think understanding those intervals is definitely a way to at least, okay, well, I might not understand the A altered or all that stuff, but I understand what a major 6 is and what a major 7 is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
and there's the
that's
minor
key.
third.
Yeah,
That's everything.
That's the key. Yeah, that is everything.
Mate,
yeah.
this has been an absolute masterclass. I am,
Well, barely, but
as always, just in awe of your guitar playing. It's so beautiful.
Oh, thanks so much, Dan. But you're too kind. I've seen lots of the amazing players you play with and who you've had on here, and you know, it's a pleasure, really. Thank you so much.
Well, what I'll do, if we do that, we'll do a vamp.
Yeah.
And then and you can take us to Flavour Town.
All right.
Oh my word, unbelievable.